Why should we create computer games for learning? What can such learning games offer to learning compared to traditional learning media like school books, presentation slides, educational films or web pages? Unlike traditional school books or educational films, games are interactive simulations. They can react and adapt to the player's actions as an individual. Secondly, games motivate learning, because they motivate the players to challenge and finally win the game by learning the skills that are required to master the game. Learning is a very personal process and works differently in every brain. When a learner engages in a learning situation, her learning will build upon her existing knowledge and experiences and will be influenced by personal preferences for both learning and playing. To bring all of these important properties of human learning into a digital computer game, three main things are important. First, a learning game should suit the needs of each and every player and her individual learning. Second, learning games should increase the motivation for learning by means of storytelling and gameplay. And last but not least, learning games shouldn't cost too much. How do we achieve this? This is a real challenge with three big quests that we have to solve in order to create an adaptive and motivational learning game. The first quest leads us into the cave of the player's personality. What aspects play a role in personalized learning? Before our game can adapt a learning game situation to their personal learning needs, it needs to know about these needs. What does the learner already know and therefore doesn't need to relearn? And what don't they know and thus need more support in order to learn it? The game must understand the learner's actual needs at every moment and be able to react in real time. This raises the following questions for personalized learning. How can the game understand what the learner already knows and what kind of experiences he or she has already gained? How can the game assess the learning behavior of the player and adapt the learning experience with a sound pedagogical strategy? How can this all happen in real time? Because there's nothing worse than keeping the player waiting while the game tries to figure something out. The second quest challenges us on the story side of the game world. How can we keep up the motivation in a personalized learning experience? How can story and gameplay follow this pedagogical adaptation and still offer a motivational experience? And the third quest leads us into the office of a badly paid serious games producer who will ask us, how can you reduce costs for the design and the content production of these games? Traditionally, by introducing the term educational or learning into the title of a game, it doubles the costs of producing the computer game. 80 Days developed design methods and appropriate technologies to turn these three quests into a successful hero's journey. There are two basic design concepts. The first design concept deals with the didactic design of the game. It is about the selection and structuring of the learning content for the game. The second design concept deals with the issue of cost reduction in production. It has got to do with the integration, reuse and automatization of existing and produced content for the game. Let's first talk about the didactic design method. In order to achieve adaptivity for learning and storytelling, we have to prepare the learning content to make it processable for the game and playable for the learner. For this, we describe the learning content in the form of skills. What are skills? Skills are both to be found in entertaining computer games and real life, because they are essential for survival in both worlds. Skills are a visible manifestation of learning and knowledge, be it procedural or declarative. Skills are observable behavior of a learner in a learning or assessment situation. In these situations, the learner is usually confronted with a task or problem to be solved. To solve the problem, learning is required, or in other words, the acquisition of skills is required. In computer games, this kind of learning is fun, although it is hard work. Why? Because learning in computer games makes sense for the player. You improve your skills in sword fighting, because otherwise the red dragon in the woods behind your castle will kill you as soon as you enter the forest. If the observable behavior of the learner shows that she has the competence to solve the task, the observer, a real teacher, or the artificial intelligence of the computer game can reason from this that the learner has learned the required knowledge to solve this task. You killed the dragon, we've seen it, and thus we know that you have successfully learned to wield the sword. In 80 days, the domain experts analyzed the geographic curricula of 10 different European countries and identified more than 1,000 different geographic skills which are suitable for children in the target age of 12 to 16. Those skills were interconnected to a network of skills that shows how these skills interrelate and build upon each other. This network is called the knowledge space or skill tree of the learning content. This knowledge space is the underlying structure for the educational level design of the game. During the game, the player wanders through the skill tree that underlies the game environment. The learning game locates where the player is currently standing in this knowledge space by knowing which learning path she already has wandered through the game and therefore through the underlying skill tree. Based on the analysis of this learning history, the game knows about her previous learning behavior, her performance and difficulties. With this information, the game knows the learner's actual learning state at every moment of the game, and can decide what skills should be presented next to keep up the challenge and which corresponding learning path the story must follow. In this way, the learning game adapts to the learner in order to create a challenging and enjoyable flow experience for further learning. On the one hand, it mustn't be too difficult, but not too easy either in terms of learning, and on the other hand, it should be meaningful and suspenseful in terms of storytelling. Now let's talk about the second design concept, the cost-effective integration, reuse and automatization of existing and produced content for the game. In order to achieve a partial reduction of the development costs, a large number of existing and freely available geographical learning resources were identified and used in the game. For example, textures from satellite pictures have been projected on a digital terrain model, allowing the generation of a navigable virtual environment corresponding to the real world. Existing maps, pictures and videos have been included as assets in the learning game. Speaking about the production of game content, the costs for character animation, which is a crucial part of storytelling and parasocial learning in the game, could be reduced about 40% with the help of automatic character animation that was provided by 80 Days Character Engine.
Weapon so die Kosten.
It's not a weapon. This is only my mobile phone.
Okay. Welcome on board of my spaceship, Earthling. May I introduce myself? My name is Fian. Excuse me for hijacking you, but I need your help.
Now let's have a look behind the curtain of our learning game technology. What's the science behind the adaptive personalization of learning in our 80 Days game? 80 Days adaptive technology works in 2 steps in order to provide the learner with a personalized learning experience. Step 1 is the assessment of individual learning and motivation of the player. This is done by a non-invasive assessment of the learning progress and knowledge state of the player on basis of the competence-based knowledge space theory. Additionally, there is a non-invasive assessment of motivational and emotional states on the basis of sound psychological models. In step 2, the resulting educational personalization in the game is chosen by the game and executed based on the preceding assessment. This adaptation takes place on the micro level of a single learning situation, which is called micro-adaptivity, and on the macro level of the game's story and game chapters, which is called macro-adaptivity. Microadaptivity uses individual support, guidance, hinting, feedback and advice within a learning situation to help the player to learn the skills of the situation. Macroadaptivity creates individual learning paths through game chapters and scenes, which are accompanied by adaptive storytelling and game pacing, according to the learning behavior and preferences of the player.